My goal in A Peek into the Life of Woodland Gremlins was to convey the theme of community. In my film, 2 gremlins and a goblin attempt to save the forest and bring the birds back by building a pattern on the floor. The comedy of the film is enhanced by the presence of the film crew and the characterful movements of the camera, adding to the mockumentary feel. I was heavily inspired by what we do in the shadows.
We're going to have a flat meeting in about 10 minutes.
20.
Okay, is it?
And I tried to replicate the absurd reality that is prominent in the film. I chose to film on the Canon XF305 as it's a portable and simple camera often used for documentaries. An element of the XF305 that was particularly useful for me was the parfocal lens. This was really useful for the cutaways as it allowed me to focus on the composition of the shot as I was zooming in and not have to worry about the subject remaining in focus. I used 2 main shot types throughout the film, static talking head shots and handheld cutaway shots. This is your documentary bread and butter, and because I was making a mockumentary, it was important that the truthfulness of the documentary genre was portrayed clearly. For the cutaways, I was inspired by sitcoms like The Office and Parks and Recreation. Community is such a physical part of the film's story, it was difficult to tell through technical aspects. It made sense to show the theme through character, so more than anything I think the camera was facilitating the performances rather than solely portraying them through technical creativity. In post, I decided to bring up the saturation to show the light-hearted, fantastical nature of the story. I had to fix overexposure present on Mud's face in the talking head clips, and fix one cutaway which was particularly underexposed. I used boom pole with a shotgun mic and 2 lav mics, attached to whichever 2 characters were most prominent in the scene, usually Root and Moss. In hindsight, I would have used 3 lav mics, 1 for each character, as even though Mud doesn't say much, they're quite vocal, so I feel they get slightly lost because of this. I wanted to keep the sound very naturalistic to make the gremlins feel realistic. I only added 2 sound effects in post, a crow and a magical sound effect. Most of the audio work was mixing. The levels were uneven and varied drastically between shots, so I neated them up in Premiere Pro, and also put short fades between each audio clip so the sequence flowed. The main creative decision I made was to not cut unused sound. I did try, but it made the characters and their environments feel very disconnected. Leaving in all of the audio suggests equality and cohesiveness, showing that each of the gremlins' vocalizations are just as important as any other gremlin. The majority of the time editing was spent condensing and reordering. Although I wrote an extensive script, I didn't end up using it much on the day. This gave the actors room to improvise, which I think helped the portrayals of their characters. My original story and running order was almost entirely different to the final film. I had to rewrite the script in post, which luckily wasn't too much of an issue because the gremlins don't speak English. I was able to change this in the subtitles. The story was originally based mostly around the interviews, the cutaways acting as cover-ups. On later reflection, I found the cutaways were the more interesting and comedic parts of the film, so I used the interviews to support the cutaways instead. Overall, I'm really happy with the final film and I prefer it to my original script. If I was to make it again, I would put more time into creating a better storyboard that's easier to follow. I would also be more definitive in my choice of creative sound to make it unique.